A war is coming. I'm afraid your friends at Hawkins are very much in the eye of the storm.
I don't have my powers.
Without you, we can't win this war.
I wanted to go ahead and ask you both, though, about this season, knowing where it's going to go and where you guys began, because it is so much darker than the first three, and how maybe refreshing that was for you guys to watch the series mature alongside you. And Millie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's weird because the story is growing while we are growing. I mean, in height, in everything. So it's actually quite sweet in a way, because it's something that we can go through all together. And the Duffer brothers definitely like to write on what we're going through. Like, I actually, funny story, in season 3 broke my kneecap in half, and they wrote in that 11 gets hurt on her left leg. So they really do write to us. So it's quite sweet that the show does grow with us. I think that's something that I've always really enjoyed, is like, I'm not doing something drastically different, because they kind of write to who we are as people.
Yeah, and Noah, I'll tweak it a bit for you. What was something that you got to do in season 4 as a character that you're like, okay, this is definitely new? Was it the whole roommate thing? Because I have to feel like that is just such an incredible wrinkle that they gave you guys this year.
No, totally. I mean, season 4 as a whole for Will is just something new and something fans have not seen and have kind of been begging for, is to see Will and he's not happy and settled yet, but he's not being attacked by the Demogorgon or the Upside Down. And he's kind of just struggling with his personal identity and with high school. And you definitely get to see that side of him. And it's very new and interesting for the viewers to see.
Well, I do know that you guys have developed, and the entire cast for that matter, a friendship over the past 4 years. But as the two of you I know are very close, is this like something where you're like, okay, we can live out our roommate fantasies because then we don't actually have to live together as friends, and we can pretend this is like our little college dorm room setting? Did you guys get to do any of that?
Yeah, I mean, we make the Duffers write us some stuff together, so because we want to work together. So this is definitely like kind of our chance to work together and live out those dreams.
Yeah. Although I would love to be your roommate.
Yeah.
Ever since you left, everything's been a total disaster. For a while, we tried to be happy, normal. I know that's impossible.
You know, it was something I actually like manifested. I remember writing in my like journal saying like, I want to be on a show where I grow up and I get to watch myself. Like, I wanted to be on a show with a lot of kids and have fun and ride bikes on set. But I don't get to do that because 80s run after you and say, don't do that, don't jump off of that. But like, it's really like, it's awesome. I can go back and look at a younger version of myself, like just like, wow, I was really like, you know, working. Like, I was really doing my thing, you know. It's wholesome, and I get to grow up with these guys, and I'll know them for the rest of my life. They're like genuine, like, you know, good people that I know. So it's a blessing. A lot of people don't get to have that.
I guess me and Erica are kind of growing together. You know, when I started this, I was about the same age as Erica. I'm a little bit older than her now, maybe like a year. So I guess I've kind of put some of my personal experience that I'm going through as a teenager into Erica. So we're very relatable in some ways. And it's cool seeing me grow, and I'm learning new things. And so is Erica in the show. So
it's really cool. I think it's going to be great for viewers to see the group having been broken up. I think it adds a really cool dynamic. There's a lot that we can't really fall back on very easily when we go into season 4, and it allows for a bit of a different dynamic and a different strategy that we're going to have to make a different type of plan when going into dealing with our new big bad, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think they can definitely expect her to be in a little bit of a darker place than we've ever seen her before. You know, she's in a lot of pain, and how she kind of copes with that is by like putting this wall up with the people who care most about her. And that ends up kind of hurting her more than anything, really. And her thoughts just kind of like start to eat away at her, and she kind of feels like a ghost of a person in some moments.
See you on the other side.
On the other side.
Yeah, I definitely felt that way when we sat down for the table read, and I think it was the first time that I had read the scripts, and I think we read about 4 or 5 of them, maybe 6 of them, and right away it was like, this is way darker, and it's going to be far more grotesque, you know? The old seasons, it was like, kind of had some of the elements of like those 80s horror movies where it's a little bit of a wink at the camera, but this one goes there, you know, that kind of like the magic of childhood has been ripped away, and I'm excited to see what people think of it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like every season has kind of had a slightly different tone and like flavor to it, and sort of it kind of touches on a different aspect of these, you know, this era and these movies that it's referencing. But this season felt particularly grown in a way, like it definitely feels like, you know, these characters are encountering, I mean, it's always been quite serious, you know, the things that they're encountering, but it's like something about this season does feel quite, I mean, still light and fun, but there's a seriousness and like a weightiness to what they're going up against, which is just interesting to see how these characters grow in those situations.
Oh, well, I think it was a very kind of funny wink to the 80s that they with this character, they were able to kind of access the whole kind of Satan hysteria, satanic hysteria about Dungeons and Dragons, and for Eddie to be that kind of like vessel for that, I thought that was kind of a really interesting way to kind of bend it. But yeah, it was very exciting. It's I think to kind of join something like this is just pure magic. You know, it doesn't happen very often that something is so adored by so many different people of different ages, and so to kind of be able to kind of participate in that and kind of, I guess, contribute to that is a once in a lifetime kind of thing. So yeah, it's amazing.
Well, kind of who you find me with today in this room. I mean, their character avatar versions and some other awesome people. I'm really, I don't know, I just feel so lucky about my team this season, and both kind of from the way that I think the chemistry works in the show, which is just totally magical, and also the way that the chemistry worked off set, which is like we're all just like making jokes and winking at each other and laughing and having a kind of great time. And so, I don't know, that was great. We're bantering. We're getting to know each other.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's a good push-pull dynamic.
Yeah, we're thinking. We're doing a lot of thinking.
We are thinking.
You've broken everything. Your suffering is almost at an end.
It happened organically. It was pretty wild. Like, I know I first, like, I read for the part of Eddie. It was interesting, and when I was asked to read again, and it was for a different sort of character. They didn't even tell me the name yet. There was just like a sort of stoner guy, and then like I was told by Sean and like Finn that like Finn had gotten a hold of like the scripts like ahead of time, and he had read it some of it, and like he saw the Argyle part, and he had asked like the Duffers and Sean like, hey, have you guys gotten someone? Because he was like, you guys should get this dude Eduardo. This was like before I even knew him, which was pretty like crazy. Like when they told me, I was like, I had no, what the f? I was like, because I was already auditioning for like other parts. I didn't even know about that. And they were like, yeah, they just thought of bringing me into it. And I felt so like, I'm like eternally grateful for that, man. It's like an honor to be a part of it, so.
Argyle brings out a totally different energy with Jonathan, which was just like so nice to play. It was like able to kind of take the shackles off a bit. And, you know, even though everything that he's going through and struggling with, he's kind of got this buddy now to be like, yo, yeah, their dynamic just kind of works really well for each other, I think. I mean, I feel like you're doing a lot of service for Jonathan. Yeah. What do you get? What does Jonathan do for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a great friendship. Like it's like a judgment-free zone. You know what I'm saying? Totally. And like he's finally able to like voice his feelings and open up about it, which is hilarious. Like the guy he's opening up to is like not the brightest guy. so it's hilarious that like that's who he's like trying to like sort of like not necessarily get advice from, but he might get a couple inserts here and there that where like I'll get through to him and then he'll be like, yeah, you're right. And it's like I guess like what Argyle would get from Jonathan, I don't know. I think it's just nice friendship, man.
Yeah.
Maybe like a consistent one, man. Maybe one that's like open to everything. Like that's like probably the coolest friendship to have is a friendly, like judgment-free one.
The show has matured, you know, with its audience and with the characters, and I think they're able to kind of do that now, especially now the kids are getting so much older. So the themes have got darker, and they're able to kind of like, you know, use as influence darker material. And I also think there's a shock value to that. I think the level that they've stepped it up in horror this season is so much. It's like, it is drastically much more scarier than the third season. So.
I was convinced I was put here for some other reason. Maybe I can still help. Even if it's the last thing I do.
First of all, I have to say, I'm going to start with you, Winona, because you've starred in some of my favorite horror films from, you know, Dracula. I think, you know, you could even make an argument about Black Swan as a horror movie. So how did you feel coming into this season knowing how deep they were going to, you know, dive into that world?
You know, I remember coming on to this show, like being very nervous that it was sort of a genre. And those movies were so long ago, and they did have this element of horror, but it was also like, you know, Coppola, and, you know, just, it was very grand. And this season, you know, we go really hardcore. It was really exciting. I mean, I think what I love so much about this season is that, and the Duffers, is that they have managed to really accelerate like all these storylines, but they also really managed to keep the heart of the show. I mean, everyone is they're fighting for survival, but they're also fighting for love, you know, in every sense. The kids growing up, that awkward, you know, high school, like that kind of stuff often gets written off as like, oh, they're kids. Oh, I'm talking about in life. But that's like when you're a kid, things are just as painful and confusing as anybody else as older people. And on top of that, they're dealing with all these unthinkable, like bizarre
monsters, literally.
Actual manifestations of what you think about yourself when you're a teenager, but like gigantic and an alternate universe. It was new for me. I don't think I've ever done a genre quite like this. It's a genre of itself. I don't want to take up too much time.
No, I'm glad you said that, because you're right. Yours were very genre and horror movies, but they weren't like this, where like they're really trying to scare the pants off of folks. But I think the fans are gonna dig it. I, as a fan, dug it. And David, I have to say with you, it's been a minute since we've had this, and the world's been obviously so locked down, but I'm sure you still had interactions, mask on, with like fans running up to you, having to say stuff. I have to hope it was about the letter, because that is such a fan favorite moment. So just clue us in on any, like, what is the number one thing fans come up to you and say, or want you to say to them?
I'm just Will's mom.
They say, can I have a picture?
You're much more than
literally,
that.
that's what people want nowadays. I mean, you know,
No, but
I
what
think
part
it's
of the show, or
Oh,
what's their?
good.
I mean, Hopper is such a complicated, great character.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
I mean, the kids love these parts, but like, I think he's so. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I mean,
I
mean, it's funny. My fan base. I'm like a very middle-aged man, and I thought my fan base, and I thought the trajectory of my career would go into this sort of like art house world of like plays in New York and like this. And now my fan base truly is like I can't walk past the middle school without like people like hordes of children just running at me.
Oh, okay, Brett. Just really quickly, Fleabag or Stranger Things? Which one do you have more?
It's a draw. It's a draw.
Okay.
Well, no, I'll say Stranger Things.
There you
I'll
go,
say
because he's
Stranger
in the
Things.
Stranger Things.
Yeah, you know, it is Stranger
you.
Things because it's now. It's happening. Fleabag is of the past. Stranger Things
I
is
love
of the present.
Fleabag.
There you go. Yeah, Fleabag.
I'm just thank you for that. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
People say Hawkins is cursed. They're not way off.
It's time.
Congratulations on season 4. The first thing I want to go ahead and talk about is the clear Nightmare on Elm Street vibes and sort of what was the decision to go in this sort of darker, more horror-driven, I would say, tone for this season.
It was something we decided really early on. It was a couple things. One was season 3 was, it was kind of our fun summer blockbuster silly season. And we always want to try to do something different. It just felt naturally like we just wanted to pivot and go in a totally different direction. And the other thing that really informed it was the fact that the kids are not kids, they're teens and they're in high school now. And, us and our writers started just talking about our high school experiences. We tend to all be nerds. None of us had a good experience in high school. Like it was a rough 4 years. And even the people who have a good high school experience, it is a challenging, very, transitional period in your life. Like where I think there's a lot of nerves because it's like you're kind of moving from childhood into adulthood, and people can be particularly mean. There's a lot of anxiety, there's depression, there's heavier themes. Like we started to talk about this and it was like, oh, we're going to be exploring some heavy themes. And this is on top of all the trauma that our characters experienced at the end of season 3. And it was like, we have to deal with that. So it just felt heavy, and it felt like it lent itself to a more intense adult psychological horror. Like it's not Jurassic Park anymore. It's Hellraiser, it's Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, those were the references that we were pulling from. So that's really why we went there.
I just like that the kids getting older, they're not kids, but it's just forcing us to evolve. It just keeps us all on our toes. It makes every season feel different. And I think that's what we really wanted to do. Each one feels very different from the preceding season.
Yeah, and I think that's the really fun thing about each year is it seems like, you guys got the gang together and then you just did the process of, once you found great pairings, just switching them up and giving us new pairings. And that's kind of been the really fun thing about this season is seeing these new pairings. How do you guys decide that? Is this like a board where you just like put the faces and it's like draft day?
A little bit.
There is.
Some of it is planned. It's like, okay, I want to see Robin and Nancy together. Like, what is that? You're just like, that'll be interesting. And and also when we get to know these actors, and then it's also why, despite our cast being as large as it is, it's like why we like to throw new characters in there every once in a while, why we introduce, the character of Eddie. It's just like why we split our characters apart. Because you just want to shake up these dynamics to keep it fresh so it doesn't feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again. But in the case, sometimes like the Steve Dustin pairing that a lot of people really responded to in season 2, that was an accident. That was not planned. We were, I think, halfway through writing that season, and Dustin had nowhere to go, and Steve, we had no story for Steve. And we're like, and then Ross and I just were like, what if maybe they get together? Is that crazy? So that was kind of like a discovery, but it always feels like a science experiment. You never know what kind of a chemical reaction you're going to get with these pairings, but why not try? And because that's what's created magic for us before. So we're just like, well, let's see what happens, and it usually works out.
And I think it's because you guys have written this world so vividly. Looking at the cast photo from the premiere last night, it's crazy to think when we were at Comic-Con in 2017 and you guys were just like the toast of the town after season 1. But one of the things that's been a through line has been the soundtrack and the fact that you guys have been releasing this on Spotify. I listen to it all the time. Very quickly, talk about the music for season 4 and again, how you guys rewrote the script on that. Very quickly, if you don't mind.
Yeah, are you 80s music or score, original score?
I mean, score. Like, I'm going to go ahead and be that girl. Sorry.
Oh, that's great.
Yes, us too. That's us.
Well, I mean, you know, for us, when we were coming up with the idea, I mean, very early on, we decided that we wanted to try synth for it because like, if we were going to do orchestral, it was just going to feel like we were trying to mimic John Williams, but you would never get there on a TV schedule like that. It would always just feel smaller than what we would want that to be. And so very early on, we cut a little trailer to help sell the show, and that was we used a bunch of movie clips like E.T. and some horror movies and Halloween, and we just put it all together, and then we put John Carpenter on there, and then we also put Survive, which is the band that two of the guys from that band score our show. And suddenly it's like, well, that is pretty cool to put, Elliot walking up to the shed and then to have synth on it. It suddenly gave it this feeling, a very unique feeling. And we're like, this has got to be the sound of the show. And so it's obviously such an integral part of the experience. And this year was really fun because there was a lot of pre-production, and we told Kyle and Michael, who are the composers, we said, why don't you guys just don't look at any picture, just you read a couple scripts, and then just whatever comes out, just give it to us. And so we had hours of just material that then we were able to sort of mold to the scenes. And
that's what we did season 1. So it's like we returned to how we approach the music more in season 1. I'm really excited about
so like the Vecnus theme and all of that just came out of this exploration. I mean, I guess it was years ago now that they were just playing around without seeing any picture at all. So it was a fun experience.
But their music this year is
top notch.
It's awesome.